Thank you everyone for joining us for another episode. And the purpose of these webinars that we hold once every third Thursday of every month is to start a dialogue and a collaboration amongst industry and procurement professionals and IT providers to talk about the future of PO management and in particular for post PO management. Today, we've got some really exciting guests who are going to be able to share quite different and unique perspectives to this problem. And I'd love the speakers to introduce themselves. So, Susan, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Walsh, founder and MD of the Classification Guru. We are fixers of dirty data. So we spend a lot of time classifying spend data, normalizing suppliers, classifying things like invoice and PO descriptions. So, we have a lot of experience in that area. And yeah, we've been doing that for 7 years as a business, and I've been doing it for about 13 in total.
Fantastic. Suzanne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Suzanne. I'm COO of the Inky List. So we're a skincare business, and we exist to bring aha moments to skincare users, bringing breakthroughs and changing lives is the goal. We manufacture
That's why you're glowing.
globally. That's why I'm glowing.
You're glowing, yeah.
Try us. We manufacture globally. We sell in 44 countries, so supply chain is our world. But we're only 5 years old, so we've gone from startup to scale up at pace. I wish I'd have met Susan before now. But understanding how we can make sure we've got the foundations in place to enter the next phase of growth, and the challenges that we've hit, overcome, learnt from, and made mistakes on along the way are very real within the teams today.
Fantastic. So to get things rolling, Susan and Suzanne, I want to give our 2 cents on what is the post-PO problem. So I'm just going to share my screen for a second.
I mean, Susan and Suzanne right there is a data problem.
So here's the fundamental problem that we're seeing is the workflows of purchasing managers. A typical purchasing manager has hundreds of orders to place and manage until fulfillment. And their workflows and their day-to-days look something like this. Every day they go into the office and the first 3 hours or so is spent on order follow-up. So that's chasing delivery dates, managing PO changes, managing documents, 3 hours of making sure everything's on track and being reactive to communications from suppliers or colleagues. Then usually new orders are placed, and in the afternoons, issue resolution. So dealing with issues to their orders, of which about 60% of the issues are related to late deliveries. Now, this entire workflow of managing hundreds of POs is thousands sometimes, is happening in the inboxes of procurement managers. The problem is that this workflow, this post-PO workflow, isn't fit for purpose anymore. This is a really good report by MIT looking at all of your supply chain uncertainties. What can go wrong?
Yeah.
You've got everything from natural disasters to biological outbreaks, information failures, miscommunication. This is an overwhelming list of things that can go wrong. And the problem is that in this new environment we're in, these things are now going wrong. It could be the Red Sea crisis, Suez Canal issue, Russia-Ukraine. Right now, as we're talking, there's high tensions in the South China Sea, where a significant amount of global cargo traffic passes through.
Oh.
Now, this old world and this new world, I think, can be best shown on this diagram here. It's by the New York Federal Reserve Bank measuring global supply chain pressure using buying and logistics data. We can see all the way up until about 2019, pressure on supply chains was pretty low. Up until about 2019 and the previous 50 years or so was the good old days of globalization. Things worked, things flowed. and that's what enabled lean just in time. Our entire operating models assumed low volatility. Then the pandemic happens in 2019, and then pressure in supply chain shoots through the roof, and it's been incredibly volatile since then. And the volatility isn't going to stop. This is the new operating environment. The way that purchasing as a function manages its post-order fulfillment can no longer be through a spreadsheet and through email chains. Too much is going wrong too quickly. And when purchasing has challenges with suppliers and coordinating the fulfillment of their orders, the entire company feels the impact. The production planners experience the inaccuracy. Finance is paying air freight costs, buffer stock. There's cash flow challenges as well when you're delivering late to your customers. Inventory can get written off because of, I guess, ineffective ordering. In the manufacturing process, you have production downtime and switchover and inefficiency. But the biggest impact is related to your customers. When parts don't arrive on time, it's bad news delivered to customers, and it's late orders, which can then have an impact on late payments and cash flow issues, lost revenue if the customer views you as being unreliable. The entire company and every department depends on procurement fulfilling its function correctly. When we looked at this issue, when we talk about the post-PO problem, this is what we mean. As a manufacturer or a big procurement team, the first piece of software I'd usually buy is an ERP system. Now, ERPs manage my orders. In fact, they do most things, but they manage my orders up until the point of raising the order. So they'll tell me what to order, who to order from, how much. But from the moment I raise an order with my supplier through to the moment that the order arrives, that workflow happens in a purchasing manager's inbox and on a spreadsheet. And that's where we come in. So this is what we mean by post PO, after I raise my order through to when the order arrives. Now, hopefully that gives a little bit of context onto the issue, the way that we see it. So my first question for Suzanne is, what are the key blockers you've identified within the purchasing team for the post-PO process that you've experienced directly? And what would be really helpful for the audience as well is understanding, what does your supply chain look like? What is the complexity you're having to manage on a daily basis?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that, because I've learned a lot already. And secondly, would you like me to narrow it down to things we've just encountered today? This is certainly real life. So yeah, just to give you an overview of our supply chain, we buy primary components, secondary components, finished goods. So we send those to a finished goods manufacturer, they complete our finished goods, and then we move them to 4 global warehouses. We own the freight throughout all of that as well. So the opportunity to go wrong is every day, and the opportunity for change is guaranteed. So what I will let you know when we raise a PO is, I promise you we will not get that exact amount on that exact date into that exact warehouse, but guaranteed. So some of the challenges we come up against are the actual changes we need to make to a PO. So whether that's changing a language, so sometimes we'll change from an English product to a multilingual product to react to demand in the market. Changing volumes, so manufacturing quantities get rounded up, rounded down. It's not the exact same amount that was on the PO. And dates, so our supply chain is typically about 26 weeks long, and the exact date that product is going to land definitely changes. So making sure that we live update in our ERP what is happening with those volumes, timings, etc., is critical to what happens next in terms of receiving. So one of the biggest challenges we have with receiving is if we haven't updated all of those things along the way, when we try to receive something it's different to what we've bought and gets kicked out. Also with the freight timings, on occasion we're being asked to receive something that we haven't actually received. So we may well have picked it up in China, but might not have actually received it in Canada for obvious reasons. yet we need a goods receipt because the manufacturer of that component wants paying, quite rightly, because we've picked it up. So that timing lag causes us challenges. And then the other kind of key area that I'd call out is then matching those invoices to the POs, making sure that they're the correct pricing, that's systemised, because ultimately the purchase order has been placed based on an MOQ in the first place. Is that second set of eyes on pricing? They're the right volumes, those volumes match. And also they're the right payment terms. So sometimes we'll buy something from the same manufacturer, but one product, due to the nature of its freight or its freight route, will have different payment terms to another product. And our ERP can't understand that.
Yeah.
So making sure that the invoices match the POs and match the reality of the procurement world is really important. Ultimately, otherwise, two things happen. One is you go on stop and a manufacturer doesn't want to make any more because we haven't paid them for what we've already got, which is worst case. Or we end up out of control of what we're paying and when we're paying it versus what we forecast to pay and when we would forecast to pay it. So the exponential impacts of getting it, not managing the changes as they happen in real time live, are painful, and they're painful to us as well as our suppliers, supply partners, etc. So getting it right is pretty important.
So one or two questions there, and then I want to bring Susan into the conversation. How is that workflow currently done right now? So you talked about updating the ERP with the latest information, matching invoices, managing changes. How is all of that? Because those are all post-PO problems, 100%. How is that workflow now currently done? Because they're clearly problems.
Yeah, in our world, it's exactly as you say. It's in purchasing managers' inboxes. We do have some kind of FTP type solutions where live changes get sent to us, whether it's production plan and in some cases freight. But the reality is it is manual. The whole lot is manual. So resource intensive. I always say when we make a mistake, it's not somebody's fault because humans are not 100% accurate. It's the fault in our processes or our systems. Because if a human can manage to not get something right and we haven't got the right process and system set up, that's where the issue is, not with the person doing it.
So what you're describing is challenges, I guess, every company that I've spoken to is having to deal with. My final follow-up question to that is, of all of the priorities that you have, and you've had this problem for a long time, every company's had this for a long time, of all the priorities that you've had, why hasn't this been a bigger priority to solve in the past versus now? Or are you seeing it being more of an issue now that you just have to get it addressed?
I think, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we're 5 years old, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
only put in an ERP 2 years ago. And honestly, that was a bigger problem. So we've truly had bigger problems to get right. I know Susan's going to talk about master data, but you have to walk before you can run. And actually, we're getting to a point now where our master data is in good order. That's taken some cleaning, but actually being quite young, we could get that
You were probably in a good
more
position
easily
to start
right.
with.
Yeah,
Not too much historical, messy
exactly.
information.
We needed to get our ERP in order. We needed to be making sure that we're communicating with our suppliers just effectively in the first place. And it becomes then where we go from good to great, because there are some things that are broken and there's some things that work, but they're just massively inefficient. And for me, it works-ish, it's just massively inefficient. So it just becomes next in the line of priorities as we scale up.
That's fair.
Kind of like, if it's not broken, don't fix it, kind of thing.
Yeah, because we've got broken things here, and here in the meantime. So
Also, I worked for a manufacturer like 20 years ago, and some of the problems that you mentioned were happening back then. This is not a new thing.
It's not a new thing.
No.
Our thesis is that the environment has now changed. 20 years ago, globalization was working pretty well, lean, just in time. You didn't have a crisis every quarter. That environment doesn't it has completely changed. So therefore, the intensity of these disruptions, the frequency that they're happening at, is forcing companies to prioritize it now. So Susan, I'd love for you to jump into the conversation, because
Yeah.
one thing Suzanne mentioned as well is it's all happening in the inbox.
Yeah.
And from your perspective in dealing with all of this data, dirty data, how valuable or how much is the data that sits in the inbox of purchasing managers? Because that's where I'm seeing a quite a big issue. But you would love your
Well,
take on this.
yeah, and it's knowing where to find what's right and what's valuable and what's not. But actually, going back to what Suzanne was saying about the different payment terms, people are inherently lazy. They will look for a shortcut. We've seen that, with uh like public landscaping. There's a nice piece of grass, and instead of go around the corner, everyone just cuts over the grass. We're always looking for the shortcut to the quickest thing. And so what I've seen from a master data point of view is one supplier with maybe 6 or 7 different records, because they've all got different payment terms. So they're using one account for this payment term, one account for that, one account for the next one, and then POs can be then assigned to the wrong account. That might mean invoices don't get paid because it's assigned to the wrong place, or people can't find what they're looking for in the one account, so they create the PO again and then it's duplicated. So you can see all that kind of information. Getting the company names right. That's something that we work on a lot of: normalization, standardization, PwC, P.W.C, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Limited Inc., GmbH, all the different versions. And so, again, creating more and more records. We did a couple of massive projects last year for 2 different manufacturers, just cleaning and standardizing their material master data. So doing like the description, so the noun, a modifier, product type, material type, size. And then just by cleaning those descriptions up, we managed to deduplicate a lot of products. So another possible issue that you might have is you maybe have 500 units of a product here. You have the same product with another 100 units here, but because they have different codes or slightly different descriptions, you don't realize that you've actually got like 300 units in inventory. You think you've either got 100 or 200 or 50 or 100. And so there's a whole important piece about making sure you put the right description in as well, the right part number, and even into the PO as well. So I think, it's getting it right from the point of entry, and that includes on the supplier side. Like, it's my responsibility to put the right information in an invoice so that I can get paid.
Yeah.
Because I've also been on the other side, waiting to get paid, chasing this, chasing that. Oh, actually, no. Oh, yeah, did we give you a PO number? Oh no, let me follow that up. Oh, we can't find the PO in the system now. Things go missing, email trails get lost, it's not being documented anywhere. Sometimes it's even just calls, telephone calls. Things are agreed on that, and then they're not documented anywhere. And then it hits the fan at some point later down the line when either something hasn't arrived, something hasn't been paid for, all those good things.
Understood. So, so 2 different problems there. Now I would love your perspective on what you're doing with leveraging AI to help resolve both of those issues. There is a tectonic shift going on right now. There's been breakthroughs in language models and the applications of those language models, and it's growing at an exponential rate. So my question for you, Suzanne, and then Susan, as 2 different really nice use cases there, is what are you doing now that is leveraging new capabilities in AI to resolve some of these challenges?
Yeah. The honest answer is we're not. And that's not because we won't, but it's because of the reality of where we are. I think it was an important point you were talking about of why we haven't addressed this yet. And as much as there's a scale up piece, I think the other pieces that have impacted the total market have been COVID. When your supply chain became a competitive advantage and your transparency through master data became a competitive advantage. So the first time CEOs talking supply chains, and that changes the game. It does change the game, and that's why there's conversations like this, right? Which wouldn't have happened pre-COVID, I don't think, even with the world of AI. The reason why I say not yet is because it's now, and what we are always really keen to do is put in a solution when we're going from good to great. It's not for today, but it's for tomorrow. And what we want to do is make sure that we're doing something that is sustainable, buildable, scalable, etc. That's slightly a bit of a cop out, I guess, but the truth. And I
Yeah.
think the reality is how like we should be, and we're probably realistically behind the curve on what's possible. But I'm kind of hoping some of the people who are listening feel the same, and we're not on our
I
own.
was going to say, I think everyone thinks, oh, everyone else is doing it, and we're not, and it's not like that at all. That's the reality.
Just on that point, I want to bring both of you. Look, we've got three of us in the UK right now. I want to just paint a picture on how much of a crisis this is in the UK. I'm not sure if you saw the recent data that came out from BBC did an article. Every major news publication did an article. We have been ranked last for the last 3 years from the G7 group of the lowest levels of investment. So for the past 3 years, out of all the G7 countries, we've been at the lowest levels. I had a look at UK productivity levels in comparison to global levels, and we're now about 35th. So what's happened since 2016 is because of Brexit, because of COVID, to massive shocks, UK industry has been in a constant state of wait and see because of they're dealing with all of this uncertainty. So I think it's a much bigger problem in the UK, and that one that's not being talked about. This long term, it's been 8 years now, 8 years of massive uncertainty, and we've almost institutionalized this wait and see approach. And
Yeah,
now that we're seeing is the impact on productivity in comparison to global
it's
competitors.
not just that, though. A couple of companies I've worked for, and this is a bit longer than 8 years, but it's probably had the knock-on effect is they've pulled all their manufacturing out of the UK and moved it to Europe because it was cheaper. And as it turns out, it wasn't always. Like trucks were getting hijacked and couldn't get the road, infrastructure to the factory was like a muddy path, not even a road. Big other problems, and so there's been such a shift away from manufacturing. But I kind of see that coming back a bit more now. There's a lot more.
So on the manufacturing point, the UK there's 250,000 manufacturers in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, that was my reaction. We're the eighth largest manufacturer in the world, would you believe it? And we're a global leader in automotive and aerospace in particular, these two industries. We're a truly global leader. Um, it has so much potential. But I genuinely feel that a lot of that is at risk because of the macro environment that the UK finds itself in. And now there's a lot of pressure on company leadership to try and go against these macro trends that they're having to fight against. But I would love both of your perspective on the state of UK manufacturing.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of inspired by your provocative language of crisis. So, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. However, this isn't a crisis to a CEO. It's
No, it's
not.
not.
And therefore, how stakeholders are influenced and how we talk about building competitive advantage, first mover advantage, efficiencies, that's talking their language. So how we can build sustainable business, how we can build scalable businesses, how we can be better operationally to execute is a really important kind of linchpin for, I think, what will drive us forward, because we're not firefighting. Literally, we're not firefighting. When you look at truly some of the crises whether we talk about human impact is significant, climate change, etc., etc., actually this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to take a competitive advantage. Exactly what you said, Susan. I think there's lots of people thinking, oh, everyone else is doing it, but they're not. And there's actually a pressure, I think, more on COOs, on operational roles to show what that competitive advantage could look like. And I mean the results of it, because talking through the detail of it is not going to switch on the people with the bank accounts. Talking through this, what this means is you've got live access. We can impact our balance sheet more quickly. We can impact our cash flow more quickly. Now we're talking, because that is an enabler to deal with some of the other challenges that we're going to face in the economic climate we're in. So I think reframing it into a world which is meaningful for, let's face it, stakeholders who have the money is going to be really important as we move forward.
But how do you sell that if we don't do something, we're going to pay the price in 24 months, in 3 years, in 5 years? Because I had a US manufacturer that just pitched it to us perfectly. And I asked them, why are you prioritizing AI more than every other company? And he said, our CEO told us very consciously that in as little as 24 months from now, there's going to be two types of companies. It's going to be us against our competitors. And if our competitors prioritize AI and automation, they'll be able to drop their overheads, like labor, by so much that the finished product ends up being anything from 20 to 30% cheaper. And in that scenario where we are competing against a competitor who has a product that's up to 30% cheaper, there's no way we can compete. And I thought, that's a good story. That's a good narrative to try and pull in senior stakeholders on why they should be prioritizing using AI throughout their operations, and why CEOs like yourself and CPOs, chief procurement officers, they need budgets. They need budgets and they need the freedom to experiment and try, because their competitiveness could be at risk in 3 years, 5 years or so.
But that was a
very... Sorry, go on.
I just going to say that's a very specific example about using automation in the manufacturing space. When you're talking about automating from a PO perspective or a system perspective, people tend to forget about that bit, and there's no real focus or investment on that.
I guess
unless, like Suzanne, she's quite unusual in that they did invest in their data and cleaning it and getting it right from an early stage. But again, the bigger and the older the company, the much harder that is to manage. And so it's kind of like, let's just leave it while it's, Yeah,
and I think the question we ask ourselves all the time is why? So why is it important that we embrace AI? Because we can get lower prices. Okay, why? What does that enable us to do? Okay, it enables us either to stay competitive from a pricing point of view with our consumers, or to spend more money marketing to touch new consumers. Okay, why? If we haven't got consumers, our business doesn't exist. So when we start talking about, yes, we need to spend some money here, but that will free up budget. I can reduce my gross margin. I will free up budget, whether that's in labour, GM directly, freight, whatever it may be. And that will give us more money to spend on marketing to fuel the business. I think if we can pitch it in a consumer first way, and I'll tell you who gets the money, because they are the best at pitching it consumer first way, and that's brand and marketing. Yeah, that's where the money goes, because they can talk about it in terms of impact to the consumer. We're going to give away X. We're going to reach X number of consumers with engagement, with TV ads, with subway ads, and it's like, oh, that's a real thing. That's real. We're driving our business because that's 1 million people. That's 10 million people. That's 1 billion people.
Yeah,
you can have the money for that. So I think if we can convert it into an enabler for that, you start talking a language which means something to the total corporation.
This is exactly what I say. It's like, talk to the business in their language. So I always say, don't talk about cost and time savings when it comes to cleaning data. Talk about how you're increasing profitability, because people are working more efficiently and working on the strategic things. And actually, you made a really great point there, Suzanne. I don't have a sales team. I'm the marketing. I have a head of marketing who works and helps me. but we have spent 7 years marketing the business without a sales team. So it's a good place to invest your money, basically.
I think one of the challenges, in particular, procurement has in getting budgets is they don't talk in terms of the customer because they're so far away. They're the most upstream function from the
Yep.
customer, and that's why they don't get budgets because they can't
Yep.
relate what they're doing to their competitive advantage that enables the company to capture more customers, to keep customers
Exactly.
happier, and that's it's a real problem. Procurement needs to get better at pitching and reframing in terms of the customer to get
I
to the point.
just saw someone post today on LinkedIn about how when they started the business, nobody cared that they'd taken on a procurement person. And so he's worked for the last 3 years making procurement relevant in the business so that people know who they are and what they do, because some people do think it's just a transactional department. You know, others think it's just cost savings. And it's so much more than that.
I think that's procurement's fault. For
Who's?
for too long, we just went through what the post PO workflow is. So they're spending all of this time chasing orders, communicating with suppliers, managing changes, matching documents, invoices, POs. These are all incredibly repetitive, incredibly manual tasks. And for procurement to get the budgets, they got to figure out how to automate and free up all of that so that they can spend more time on deeper supplier relationships, on big cost saving initiatives, on things related to risk management and strategic sourcing.
Sustainability now, that's a huge thing, you know, that everyone's being challenged on that. But there's not extra resources, you know, how are they going to fit all this in? So I always say it's about using AI wisely, not blindly. So use it on the tasks that it will be very good at.
So I wanted to bring you into this because the breakthroughs in LLMs, what this means for procurement and post order management is the ability to automate all of that mundane, repetitive tasks, which then enables us to do the high value added things. So, and I think more generally, anything that is incredibly repetitive, incredibly mundane will be automated.
Yeah.
So, looking into
Humans will make far more errors doing those I mean, we've seen it with OCR already, you know, invoice scanning. You
exactly.
know, that's more accurate than me sitting typing in
And I think
100 invoices.
sometimes it's uncomfortable, but adding up the cost of our mistakes is really powerful.
It's really
And
important.
that's not a blame game. That is not a shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's the reality of a manual process. But I think sometimes we shy away from adding up those costs because we try to fix the problem. We try to find a solution. We don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah, or we don't want anyone to think that there's anything wrong. You know, let's hide it.
Yeah.
Let's pretend it's fine.
But it's actually the biggest thing to gain traction in what we wasted that much. Yeah. And we lost that much time. Yeah. And we missed the launch because of that. Yeah. Like it's one of the most powerful things we can do is being humble, being honest, being open to all the things that don't go well
You're
and
right.
quantifying it.
You know, we look now and we think, oh my goodness. Well, first of all, they never used to have POs. And then, oh my goodness, everything was on paper and stored somewhere. And we look at that now and go, oh, can you believe it? And, you know, in a few more years, we'll be looking back at this point in time going, can you believe it was all done on email?
I want to show you exactly where all of this is going. And we're obviously a startup, so we're just a little bit ahead of other companies. But these, I'm just bringing up my screen. So anything that's repetitive and manual will be highly automated. And so our customers, every morning, they receive a message from their AI agent. And the AI agent works in the background and it does all of the tasks for them. So here the agent has requested 8 suppliers to update their orders. It's been following up on 14 documents. It has followed up with 7 unresponsive suppliers. And then it's identified the changes that needs the procurement manager's attention. So we're going to see a lot of AI and a lot of software as a whole work like this, where it's operating completely in the background, doing things by itself, and then alerting you for exceptions. So these are the 3 exceptions that I got to manage. And as I manage these exceptions, I go in, press that one button, and now I have the 3 tasks. So here, there's been a delivery date change. I get my emails in here, and the AI has understood what's going on here. So it's looked at the latest delivery date. They want to move to the 27th. It's then structured that information. So the AI has been able to read the entire communications of the suppliers right from when the first PO was raised through to the latest changes. So it's been able to structure all of that, and it's enabled the collaboration with other colleagues. So then I'll just confirm it. Now, another really good use case is confirmations, order confirmation. So the typical problem, I place hundreds of orders. I forget to confirm orders. I think they're going to arrive 6 weeks later. Supplier tells me, hey, we never received the PO, when actually they did. When orders haven't been confirmed in 48 hours, the AI gives you an alert. Now, how does it do this? Well, looking inside this order, the purchase order was raised on the ERP. Then the AI automatically communicates with the supplier and asks for a confirmation. So this is a repetitive communication that has to happen hundreds of times a week for most companies, and the AI has been able to do this. And then when the supplier hasn't responded back, this is all happening via email, and that's when I get an alert. And because we're going to have these AI assistants that they're essentially language models on top of all of this data, we can ask questions to the AI like this, which gives me visibility over all of my orders. Now, the big use case there is
So cool.
the big use case there is production planners, for example. So production teams and purchasing teams are, hand in glove. But all of that communication for the rest of the company of when orders are going to arrive, what's the quantity? We have a customer that has put a big screen on their job shop and just has their inventory and their purchase order data there. So everybody has access to the supply chain and the latest delivery dates. And that's because the AI is doing so much of the work, and then it's making that information accessible to everyone. So we're going to see.
That's cool.
That is so cool.
This is where all the tech is going, and look, we're really excited by post PO because so much of the workflow is repetitive. So therefore, it can be automated with the breakthroughs in
Just the
LLMs.
time sifting through emails, I've just done that today, like for other stuff, like where was that? Where was it?
And what we discovered is that everything's happening in the email boxes, the inboxes. All the action is happening there. And you can try and take everybody off of emails into a new system, and it's just going to be a real pain of trying to get all of those stakeholders in, your suppliers, your production teams, your purchasing teams. It's the probability of failure is so high of the system.
Yeah, you're right. And also from a supplier point of view, because this has happened to me, you then as a supplier have to sign into all these different systems to fill in this, that, and the next thing. And it's just...
Or because of the breakthroughs in LLMs, you can stay in the inbox. So our AI sits in your inbox and it speaks to your suppliers for you, and then it gives you alerts when you need to. And that's the capability that LLMs have enabled for.
Can it manage my diary too? I need one of these for my business.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's loads of applications there. There's loads of applications there. So that's what we're working on to automate this.
I think it's brilliant. What are the sort of key enablers? And I'm looking squarely at Susan here in terms of your master data has to be right in the first place. Otherwise, it can scrape your inbox and give you a piece of information, but that piece of information isn't. So what are the enablers?
Yeah. Well, our business is actually, we don't use AI in our business. We get the data clean so that other people can use it for their training data sets for AI. Because there's loads of people out there who are doing amazing technical stuff with AI, but there's very few people out there who can manually clean like we do. So we're sticking to that. And again, using it smartly and wisely, not just blindly starting to use AI because everybody else is. And it all really does stem from, you have to have clean, accurate. AI is not very good with context. So again, using a word just like services, be very specific. Is it cleaning services, technical services, legal services? Keep it. Be mindful of how it's being interpreted as well. And yeah, like if you do have multiple versions of, sometimes you can have one description and multiple part items assigned to the one description, so that could cause problems. So check for things like that. We also see one part number with maybe 4 or 5 descriptions attached, and sometimes I've got an example that I use when I'm talking. This was a real life project we did last year. There was one part number and 4 different descriptions. 2 of the descriptions were like cleaning products, and then 2 were like something completely different. So how are you even supposed to know what you're buying, ordering, tracking,
And what are some of the other enablers? I'm thinking connections with ERP, inboxes. Like what else needs to be true?
So the big question when you're asking this is, what do you need? What data needs to be accurate for the AI to do this for you, to communicate with your suppliers and give you all this information? And our customers can get set up in literally 30 seconds because it goes into the inboxes and then it looks at what emails that you currently have with what suppliers, reads all the documents, understands your PO communication. So your POs, if you're raising the right POs, by that I mean the supplier name, the orders, the quantity, the description. So as long as you're placing the right orders. And then secondly, and that's it, sorry, that's it. So it is literally that within 30 seconds. Now, our annual customers, so what we say to everyone is, look, get started now. Let's automate a lot of these workflows. And then in 30 days from now, let's integrate into your ERP, because that's where all of the valuable data is. So all of the, Susan, when you were talking about all of the changes, pushing that back into the ERP, we do that for our customers. So any delivery date change that comes in, any document, any price changes that come in the post-PO process that happens with supplier coordinations, all of that instantly gets pushed back into the ERP. So
amazing.
The key enabler is just you're placing the right orders.
Yeah.
The magical thing, this is really where the transformational value gets created. It's the pre-PO data that's in the ERP. It's actually all of the data that Susan works on. Because when all of that data is clean and that's in the ERP, we get customers that are asking the AI, because they've integrated all this other data in, things like which materials are at risk of stock out. And then the AI is then able to look at, okay, this is your sales data, this is your current inventory data, this is your open PO data, and it just matches all of the 3 and says, you need to place this order for this amount with this supplier. Now, previously, you'd have an MRP to try and do all of that for you. But the fact that a language model can do all of that and find the correlations and tell you what to do is astonishing. So all of the data that Susan cleans up, which I think is mainly pre-PO data.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Once that goes into our AI, the results, it's really transformational value. Yes.
I want to have a play.
I know. Like, what email have I forgot to respond to today or this week? Something slipped.
And it's like what you're saying there, Suzanne, is human error. No one means to miss out an email. No one means to forget to confirm an order.
Yeah.
These things happen. You just got to stay on top of them. And of all the story that I gave you about, big supply chain crises in the world and how all of that is changing, of all of that, what we've discovered over the last 3 years is most of the issues happened from simple mistakes in the workflow, in the way the workflow happens. You don't get a Red Sea crisis every week. These happen. These are.
It is, and it is literally, someone's off sick for a day.
Yeah.
So what do
you can't find the information.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. And if we expect humans to be
and a lot of it is just
and alert 100% of the time, we'll fail. Yeah.
100%. And in normally, what would happen is there'd be a bottleneck. No one knows what's happening to those orders. There might be some kind of change that person that's fallen ill or has gone on holiday. But what happens with our customers and what's going to happen in the future is you just speak to the AI. The AI knows where all the orders are. The AI can help you manage those changes. And people no longer become a silo or a bottleneck.
Yeah. I'm thinking like once you've, grown your little PO empire, that this would be amazing for like accounts receivable and accounts payable too.
Yeah.
Like which invoices are due, which are overdue, send them a message.
Yeah, so we have the AI is able to perform 100 different automations. And you just have to pick which automations you want. So we've got these pre-PO automations. The one that adds a lot of value is one that Susan mentioned, is every time a invoice comes in from a supplier, it finds the corresponding PO. And then if there's any discrepancies between the two, it flags it out to you.
Oh,
If
nice.
not, then it sends it to someone.
Yeah.
So there's so many of these automations, but the
Some
ones
people put zeros instead of. Sometimes it's
That's
really hard
great.
to tell the difference between an I and an
Yep.
L. So yeah,
Yeah.
or a one.
And this is where language models do really well, is just
Yeah.
identifying all of those. So that's a really good one. But the other ones about outstanding balances, everything that's financially related to spend, because 60% of your revenue is going through procurement for most manufacturers. Those ones get the interest of C-suite. Is anything related to spend data and getting regular updates on spend, how much is leaving now, or in what month, how much
Yeah.
are we actually leaving our bank account? We've got different payment terms for different suppliers. Those ones are really
Yeah. It's so cool.
How have implementations gone as you've put this live into different businesses? And is there a common commonalities between those that have been most
Yeah,
successful?
common problems. Could it be data quality by any chance?
Or
so
just common success, like what makes it work,
yeah. So
like right first time, or a successful launch for you?
so the way that we sell this has completely changed. And if we had a prospect, we would say, hey, you need this entire transformation, but we're not going to sell you this transformation. We're going to sell you a roadmap. And the first step of that roadmap is a couple of £100 a month. Let's start getting some wins on the board and automating some of these processes. Let's get some validation internally. Let's go make some people happy. And then once you've got that case that this is the impact that it's had now, let's do the ERP integration, because that's where the transformational value comes in.
Yeah,
It
smart.
becomes
Always saying start small.
start small,
Keep it
Yeah.
simple.
board.
Yeah.
Then it becomes very easy for anyone to sell it internally, because by that point you've got 20 people that have benefited. And it's so much easier doing it like that than pitching someone straight away and saying, hey, you need to transform your ERP. There's all of this
Yeah.
data. That's not a receptive pitch, is
Yeah.
a couple of
And I
hundred.
think
Let's automate 80% of procurement workflows.
most people have experienced a bad ERP implementation and nobody really wants to go through it again. So you can show that it's easy and really beneficial. That's half the battle.
100%, 100%. So to answer your question, Suzanne, it's what makes it a success is we're both agreeing that, hey, we're going to get some quick wins on the board. And if you succeed here, then we'll do something much bigger. But you're just open to us showing you what's possible for something much bigger, because we'll run some POCs in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Those customers are most successful is they want some quick wins now and then show me what's possible.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah, so
Is it just in English?
no, it's like 60 plus languages. So some of our customers have suppliers that message them in Chinese. So it's able to then transcribe it back into English and then reply back to the supplier in Chinese.
That solves another challenge in terms of communication, not necessarily, well, sometimes in different languages, or actually more commonly people trying to speak English that's not their first language. That's where the translation error occurs. So we understand what they've said in English, but that's not what they meant. So being able to speak each other's language quite literally means much less room for manual error of messaging.
100%. We had a customer that had spent money hiring Spanish tutors to teach their procurement teams how to speak Spanish.
Wow.
Right.
I can believe it.
To try and minimize the impact with Spanish suppliers. That's how much of a mess it was. No.
Yeah. That's such a time suck as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting times.
It is. And this is just the start.
So the conversations you're having with organizations, is it I guess there's like a pattern or trend of the same kind of problem that you're helping solve.
Yeah, so post PO is definitely the problem we're seeing across the board. The only people that probably don't have post PO is the mega enterprises that have so much bargaining power they can bully their suppliers to do anything that they want. That's the only people we're seeing that don't have post PO issue. The massively underserved segment is the SME and the mid-size.
Yeah.
And because they don't have the bargaining power, they don't have the budgets, and I think that's where the opportunity is. If you can service those people at a low enough price point and keep them happy,
I
maybe
think
not served.
I think that's spot on. So having come from literally startup world, we had one person that was managing all of supply chain, procurement, invoicing, like the whole lot. So it was one human anyway, and trying to automate what relatively would have been a very small part of their job wouldn't have added significant value because they're only telling themselves anyway. So it's when you do start to scale and you get into teams of 5 or 10 across, and you've got a procurement role, you've got two different purchasing roles, maybe a stock availability and an inventory role, reporting that goes out to sales teams,
Finance,
purchase order teams, finance team. It's that point which I think is exactly what you're saying about SMEs. I think that is the sweet spot. Because I think earlier than that, I don't think it's a financial barrier. It's an added value barrier. It's only one human doing so many different things that it would be the tip of the iceberg, which would be great and very nice. But actually, it's only 5% of the job anyway.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, Suzanne, like go and count the hours you're spending on doing this manually, and then show how quick it can happen
Prove it
in the tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agent PO to the rescue.
Yeah, what we found is it definitely depends on complexity. And for us, we just measure complexity by if you have over 100 suppliers, you probably have too much complexity. Or if you have above a certain amount of orders. So the smaller companies that, 25 suppliers, they can usually manage it. But
there's companies that exist like that.
But then as soon as you get to over like 100 suppliers, and then it's exponential. The complexity is exponential. You need like smart systems in place to manage those. So definitely related to complexity, and staying on top of that.
Your little logo, by the way, reminds me of Inspector Gadget.
That's the goal.
So you need the little tools as well, without being a trademark infringement.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Brilliant. So wrapping up, Susan and Suzanne, I think the audience would love to hear, I guess, from what you've seen in what AI can do and understanding of the problem, what would be some of the takeaways that you're going to be thinking about AI, about tech, and how it applies to this problem? Any lasting messages you'd leave for the audience when it comes to AI tech?
Yeah, I'll give you a call in the morning. No, I think there's one thread which is the key to all of this, which is systems and process, and alongside that, communication. So if AI can support the process that links into ERPs and own the communications, I mean, I'm all in. And I always think of it in that way: systems, process, behaviours. And in this case, it's all about comms. So I think it's time is probably, I know that was one of your provocations early on, but I think it's time to it's time to stop and think, because otherwise we're going to keep doing what we've always done.
That's a really good point, because sometimes you can be so busy in the day-to-days, you need to take a step back and just breathe and think and plan. And when you're in constant firefighting state with issues, you don't get the chance to do that.
Yeah. That's
Susan,
so true.
what are your thoughts?
I think people who are not familiar with AI tend to blanket approach it. So like, we're going to buy in the AI, but actually nobody's really thinking about what it's for and what it's doing. And if you're very specific about the tasks that you're using it for, then it can be really powerful. Don't just blanket throw tech at everything. But I think we all know that underlying all of that and underlying everything in business is that bottom layer of clean data. That's the most important part, that helps all of this work and run smoothly and really free up an immense amount of time for people and teams, like hugely. Work workplaces are being reduced massively, and so anything that you can use to enhance and free up time of your team who are already overworked, and overworked people will make more mistakes too. So yeah, use it, leverage it, use it wisely, not blindly.
Suzanne, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, enjoy the football. And we will keep in touch. Brilliant.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.